Hey everyone, welcome to another one of my little crafty how-to videos. Today I am showing you how I made this adorable birthday card for a very special little friend of mine who I will be sending this off to for her birthday. I really challenged myself with this one to use minimal colours, minimal Copics, so I'm going to show you how I did that. I just froze the frame there for a sec so you can see what colours I used to colour this in, and as always when I start making a card, I cut my card base for the front. I started off using some distress inks at the beginning, and I'll show you how these did not work for me. It's not that nothing ever really goes to plan, it's just that I have a lot of trial and error when I make these cards. So I started using pink and blue. I thought these were the colours that I wanted to use, but they just did not work. And you can see I did a really bad job at blending these to begin with because I could just feel that this was not the look I was going for. I also did it in some darker colours because I thought maybe those were the colours I wanted, and they kind of were, but they were way too bold and way too dark. So I had to kind of have a think about what I wanted to do with this one. As you can see, they are super bold, and I just gave up on blending. I was like, no, this is not what I wanted. So I used my Lawn Fawn inks. I haven't done much blending with these because they're not really labeled as blending inks, but I have seen some people use them for background, so I thought I'd give it a go. My ink blending brushes were so loaded with those other inks that I thought it would ruin it, so I got out these little, I don't know what these are, the little sponge blending tools. I think there's a reason why these are becoming a thing of the past. They are just so annoying to use. I don't know what I do wrong. I must be too rough with them, but I destroy them all the time. So I use the Mermaid colour, which is no surprise here. It's a mermaid card, and this is the lavender colour. I would have to look for the exact name, but it is that purple lavender colour, and it was really pretty, and I thought, okay, I will start at either end and bring it in the middle and see if I can get these inks to blend. I think one of the main reasons I'm not a fan of these tools is because, one, that little Velcro felty bit on the back just rips off. But I also just find when I'm stamping the ink onto the paper, I always get like circles or squares. You can't really move them and roll them around to blend. Or maybe you can, but I am just no good at it. Okay, so this is where I started to blend them together. I just kept going back and forth around the middle, and I covered all the purple in the same Mermaid ink just so that it would continue on down to the bottom of my scene. After that, I thought I need some waves in this, and while I do have wave dies, I thought maybe I would just use the clouds upside down and see how that went, and I think it turned out really cute. I did this with both the mermaid colour and the lavender. Once that was done, I sprayed it with a little bit of water, and although these inks aren't really, I don't know, labelled as ones that can react to water, they did really well. I used a little spray bottle that gave a very even coverage of water so that it looked like very tiny bubbles all over the place. No big splotches for this one. I then used some of those original colours that I had planned on using for my background to add some little flecks, and that kind of brought everything a little bit together. I then used my watercolour pigments. I used the white gold for the background here, and it just looks so good. I love shiny, and this is so metallic and so shiny. It just really added to the background. On to stamping. So as you can see, I stamped out some mermaids, and I just used some fresh lavender. I looked up the name, fresh lavender, and I used some of the mermaid ink as well to stamp out the coral. I did it a couple of times over and over again so that it would be nice and dark, well, as dark as this will get, so that it matches the background, but it doesn't blend into the background too much. Here I am using some jelly rolls and my Wink of Stella, and I will also show what pens I used again, my limited Copics, and I used 2 greys as well because I wanted the rock in this to be grey. So I kind of cheated. I used 9 markers in this instead of the original, 7 Copics that I was hoping to use. And here I get started colouring. I think I finish up at about 6 minutes 30 if you'd like to skip the colouring. Now that my coloring's almost complete, I will just let you know that off camera I added all of my little white details with my jelly rolls. I just thought it would be far too long to show you all of those little things as well. And as you can hopefully see with these Copics, I'm only using the 2 colours of each shade, if that makes sense, and they're blending really, really well. I'm really impressed with how this turned out, despite the limited amount of colours. Sometimes I feel like I just try to use too many things all at once, and then my cards just become a rainbow mess, and as much as I love rainbows, sometimes less is more, especially while I'm learning to colour in with these markers, and I just think it turned out really nice. Onto the ground. So I just cut one of the little stitched hillsides and covered it with some brown ink and gave it a little spray so that the water bubbles made it look a little bit sandy. And then I just did some of the other shades of brown and flicked them over the top just to give it a little bit more texture. Now with this shell die, it's a Sizzix die. I got it a long time ago. I'm sure it'd still be available somewhere. I was going through my dies thinking I want to make this like a bit of a window and I want it to be special, and then I came across that seashell and I was like, oh my gosh, yes. That is exactly what I was looking for. So I cut my window using the, oh goodness, what's this one called? The reversed stitched scallop. I will look it up. Okay, the proper name for this one is a reversed stitched scallop window. So I used the second one from the biggest, and I was thinking, oh gosh, how am I going to line this up and do multiple cuts with this one so that I can make a nice deep pocket for all of my shaker elements. And then I just remembered that I have other stitched circles that I could use that were a little bit bigger, and you're not going to see, I didn't need the detail for these and you wouldn't see it, so I used that with a couple of pieces of white cardstock in the same size as my front. And I just cut that down a couple of times until I felt like it was deep enough to get my nice chunky shaker elements moving around. I had to remember to keep that piece from the window because that is going to be stuck on the very bottom of the card base so that my background is continuous. I ran some glue all the way around inside my shaker window and just smoothed it out with my finger and let this dry. I do this so that I have minimal chances of that one sequin getting stuck because one of them always seems to get stuck on the first shake. So I kind of just fill in all the gaps. Moving on to my seashell, I used that fresh lavender ink again, and this is when I finally cracked it with that tool and ditched it, and I got out my ink blending brushes, and this one was still loaded with quite a bit of pink, but I love how that pink and the lavender kind of came together to make this seashell a matching shade to the card, but a little bit different where it stood out. And here I am just playing around, making sure that I have cut everything at the right size so that my seashell will fit and cover up the window completely. I decorated the shell just a little bit more with some other coloured inks. I used some pinks to make it pop a little bit, and I also used one of my watercolour pigments. I believe it was the champagne colour. Using the pinks and the champagne colour just brought a little bit of warmth to the front of my card. And there it is, nice and shiny. Here I am just cutting out a piece of acetate, just roughly, because I'm not going to see the edges of this one. Just lining it up with my window and cutting it out. While I remembered, I thought I would stamp the sentiment inside the card in case I made it wonky or something so that I could fix it before sticking on the whole front of the card. So I chose "It's Your Birthday, I'm So Jelly," and I popped a little jellyfish down the bottom. And here I am sticking the entire front onto the card base, and for those of you with a sharp eye, you probably noticed that I stuck it on upside down. I had to remove it and try again. That was just a disaster. Honestly, I've only done a few of these how-to videos, and I probably have enough footage for maybe a 10-minute blooper reel. That's just how I craft, apparently. Lots of mistakes, but lots of learning. I thought the front of my card would also need a little bit of a sentiment so that we know what's happening, so I used the "Have a Magical Day," and I stamped that on the shell. I did stamp it in the same fresh lavender colour, so it did fade to almost the exact same colour as the shell. So to fix that, I went over it with one of my white Jelly Roll inks, and it looked really cute. Here I am sticking the little mermaids in their new home. I often use my tweezers to hold the pieces that I'm gluing because I just find my hands by the end of the day, they're a bit tired and I get a bit shaky, so it just helps me position things nice and neatly before I stick them down properly. Once they were dried, I used my powder tool and totally loaded up this whole area with powder so that there's no static for my little shaker elements, because I do not like when this chunky glitter gets stuck somewhere, it just doesn't budge. I used a variety of different sequins and gems to fill this up. Some of them were teal, some of them were clear, and some of them had that iridescent sheen to them. I quickly put a bit of powder on the back of the acetate as well, so that when I do shake this, my glitter won't stick to it immediately. And then my favourite part of a shaker card is that first shake and seeing if it worked or if I have a cheeky sequin that gets stuck. I scored my seashell where I wanted it to bend. And there is that little sentiment that I coloured in white. And because I like to show everything that happens here, the next scene is a little bit disturbing. One of my children called me and I was in the middle of sticking down the whole front, and I managed to just drop it where I was, dealt with the child, came back and realised that I had already taken the tape off and it was totally stuck. It was so stressful, but I managed to save it. I then started sticking everything onto the card front, creating my scene full of very cute party sea creatures. Now you can see my whole little scene has come together so well. I'm really happy with these markers. I'm really happy with the colour combo. I hope my little friend who I'm sending this off to will love it as much as I do. Here are some pictures of my completed card. If you like how this card turned out, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. I've been bringing out new videos once a week at the moment, and I have so many things planned to show you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!